Left side Trey, high-low favorites, trying to get down to Marvin. Touch pass, Alec. Right corner three. Whap! Timeout, Larry Drew. Great team basketball by the Jazz.
It is tip-off for August 12th, 2014. I hope you are all well. We'll touch on what do you have to stop in the NBA, Marc Cuban's comments, the schedule's coming out, and Brock mowed him onto something. It's all coming up on today's edition of Tip-Off. Pow, pow. How are you? Hope everyone is well. Special thanks to my mother, who worked excessively hard on this day 44 years ago. And special thanks to all of you for the last year. Has been great. If you look at years in the sense of birthdays, then I'd have to say the last one's been great fun. Family's great. Basketball season fun. The social interaction's been great, so thank you all very much. All right, let's roll through some stuff today, get this baby off and running. By the way, somebody said they saw Derek Favors at Lagoon yesterday. So Favors continues on the amusement park run. Hello, Austin. Please mute your stuff. Thank you. Favors continues his run at all the various Seven Peaks stuff. All right, schedule comes out tomorrow. That's always a very fun, exciting day. I'll tell you, here's about 5 things that I will look for. The obvious one everyone looks for is back-to-backs. I don't. I look for 4 and 5 games. We didn't have any last year. But I'm hearing we'll have some this year because there's that whole talk of the extended All-Star break. So one of the first things I'll look at is what All-Star break is. It sounds as though the players, the All-Stars, requested, hey, if we're doing All-Star break, we don't get a break, so could you put something in there so we actually get a break? It will be curious to see if the week-long All-Star break actually exists. In which case, then, I would guess a few more back-to-backs, a few more 4 and 5, 4 games in 5 nights. The other one I would tell you to look for, 2 other things that maybe are a little more obscure. Practice days early. Try to figure out when Quinn's going to be able to get this team in the gym and practice. You know, if you play a back-to-back and travel the next day, you're probably just having a flush out. You're probably not getting out on the floor. So you have to kind of look at it. If you're on the road playing 4 games in 5 days, are you really going to practice that 5th day? Probably not. So can Quinn, in that opening month, when we travel, we have the 2 traditional trips. We have the pre-Thanksgiving trip and the pre-Christmas trip. That Disney on Ice thing comes every year and right before Thanksgiving, and it sends us out on the road, which, you know, someone's got to go on the road. But sometimes I also wonder whether it hurts us because we just don't get enough practice time in there. So can we get some practice time in? Extended home stretches early, I think, are important in the sense of getting the team its kind of bearings and getting on the ground. And I would call those clusters of confidence. Do you have any part of the schedule where this young team, who's probably not going to win a huge amount of games, somewhere 30, 35 is probably the high, 25 probably if the rest of the league's really good. There's definitely, I've said this to other people. People ask me, are we better? I look at where we're going. I like where we're going. But then I start ranking us in the Western Conference. I have no idea what that sound is. Let me see what I can find. So then I start to rank us in the Western Conference, and it's my NBA.com site. And if we're 14th in the Western Conference, teams with 14 wins don't win a lot of games. I mean, that's just the reality. Even if you're better, because there's 13 teams better than you, really you only win based on who you're better than, not how much better you got. So who knows? But anyway, clusters of confidence. Do we have stretches where we're home, we get a little practice, and we can win some games? And that's not a lot of teams, but is there a Minnesota Laker Orlando stretch or something like that where suddenly, hey, wow, we might get them on a back-to-back and be able to pull off a few things there. There's a way to look at the back-to-backs. I personally, maybe the players will kill me for this, I don't find the back-to-backs, and this may just be where my life is totally different, I don't find the back-to-backs dramatically I don't find them that tough, particularly if you do a, you know, Detroit to Indiana. That's not that bad. What's bad is the first game at home, second game on the road, and your next game's back home. So you play home and go to LA, Portland, Dallas, Houston. Go. Those are death. Because you're going the wrong way in the time zone. The problem with those are you you play at home, you go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning in whatever city you're playing in. You play there, you fly home and go back to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning again. If the home game is the second game on the back-to-back, so you play in Portland and then you come home and play whomever, you go back home, you're in bed by midnight if you want to be. Or at least you're home, right? You're not traveling and flying after the game. So there, to me, there's a big difference between back-to-backs. You can have back-to-backs, and then there's brutal back-to-backs. And those brutal back-to-backs have a lasting, they'll get you another day or two along the way in the season. And then the last one I would say is, and I don't even know how to characterize this, I would talk about it, growth stretches. So do we have any stretches where you get, who are the teams, you get Gasol one night, Blake Griffin the next night? I don't know. There aren't a lot of big men left in this league. But, big DeMarcus Cousins the next night, and you can look at that and say, well, Ennis and Derek, we're going to find out about you a 3-game stretch. You get a stretch where you get a bunch of point guards lined up 4 or 5 days in a row, and see how Dante and Trey come through those. So those are the things when I see the schedule that I will look at, and that's how I will look at the schedule. I will also look at my daughter's birthday, February 11th, my wife's birthday, January 18th, and my anniversary, January 28th. And then I'll go look at all my kids' ski races to see when and if I'm in town or not. So if you really want to know how I'll probably really look at it, those first 2 things will be first. I thought this was an interesting quote from Marc Cuban. The thing about the NBA is it's becoming much smarter. There's a lot of more analytics. The new owners, they have come in since I have been here, are just really smart guys. So rather than always doing it the same old way, school way, the way it's always been done, teams have to be a lot smarter, and the league evolves a lot more quickly. I think one of the reasons we were able to give San Antonio such a run is we had such high basketball IQ. We were able to make adjustments that they didn't expect. I think our basketball IQ is a little bit higher than I think if our basketball IQ was a little higher, then we should have beat them. We could have beat them. We would have beat them. And that's what we're looking for this summer. Guys with high basketball IQs, guys who play multiple positions, guys who are unselfish and were willing to move the ball, and guys who could hit the open shot. It's an interesting idea. I don't know what I think of it, actually. And, probably because it's hard to equate basketball IQ and how you decide who has good basketball IQ and who doesn't. But it's at least worth noting that, they have a really intelligent coach in Rick Carlisle, and so that's how they're trying to use maybe one of their best assets is their head coach to be able to find, exploit some of these things about him. At least that's one way to look at it. And I think, it's at least interesting that he is claiming that they view that type of basketball IQ that importantly. Richard Jefferson they signed. Al Farouk Aminu, I'd never think was a basketball IQ guy, so I don't know whether they're doing that all the time or not. By the way, a few other quick notes for you. Internship opening, basketball analytics for the Portland Trailblazers. Some of you out there are pretty smart. Worth a note. Keep an eye on Australian Isaac Humphries. He's 6'11". He dropped 40 in the U19 tournament the other day, and there's a bunch of international U17, U19 tournaments. This is where Dante Exum came onto the scene a few years ago, so it's worth noting and keeping an eye on that. Brock Modem continues to play well. He's coming to Jazz training camp. There are plenty of really good European players, or not even European players, but international World Cup type players who have played well, who doesn't pan out onto the the NBA scene, the NBA game is so different, but it's worth just noting that he continues 2 games, 3 games in a row now to keep stepping it up for the Australian national team. They won yesterday 91-78 over Lithuania in the first kind of 3-game sequence of their games, and Modem had another decent game along the way. I think Dave Anderson, their longtime veteran, led them with 19 points in that game. So it's just kind of worth keeping an eye on Modem. He continues to just he wasn't really thought of making that team. He did make that team. It was a little bit of a surprise, and now he continues to just kind of step forward and play really, really well for Australia with some other good players, not NBA players, not beating out NBA players. So, again, I want to be a little cautious, but I just think it's a neat story. He was very good at Washington State and very good in the Pac-12. So it wouldn't be a stunner, but it's at least worth keeping an eye on, at least noting that he played. And that was a nice win for Australia. They probably had to get that one. Lithuania's not quite the team that they once were, but at least it's nice to see them get that win and 91-78 and gain some confidence. The longer they can play, the better for Dante Exum, and the longer that they play well there. A bunch of little notes today. That's kind of what I have for you along the way. I didn't write down X. I read all the articles and I didn't write down Exum's final line. Modem, by the way, I didn't just give that to you. I think he had 10 points on 5 of 5 shooting off the bench. And I'm not sure I wrote down Dante's what Dante did in that game. I'm not sure I even know, frankly. I kind of took my notes on Modem when I was looking for it and didn't see it. So I don't have a Dante box score on that one. My bad. And I don't think he got the day. Oh, here it is. I have a box score. Let me see what I can find. Dante played 23 minutes. He went 1 of 3 from the field, or from 2, 1 of 6 from 3. So 2 of 9 shooting. He had 4 assists, 1 rebound, 5 points in the game. Played 23 minutes overall. Modem got his 10 points, by the way, in about 14 minutes of action. Nobody on the team played more than 26 minutes. So Exum playing 23, Deladova played 26, Ingles played 26. But not a good shooting night. Dante's going to have to learn how to make shots. He does not have that those skills as of yet. It's a long time for this, but Chad Ford posted this yesterday, so I just grabbed it quickly. The ESPN Eastern Conference forecast came out. Ford voted the East is the following. Cavs number 1, assuming Kevin Love. Bulls number 2. Hornets number 3. Wizards 4. Raptors 5. Heat 6. Hawks 7. Pacers 8. Nets out of the playoffs 9. Knicks out of the playoffs 10. Pistons 11. Celtics 12. Magic 13. Bucks 14. And 76ers 16. I haven't devoured it enough to look into it. I'm behind. Actually, I usually have started to kind of break down teams by this point, and I have not done so. I'm having too much fun with my kids, or my daughter. My son's still at camp, but I think the only thing I think the Bucks will be better than 14. They had a lot of injuries last year. I could see the Bucks knocking up to 10 next year if things kind of come together a little bit. But worth keeping an eye on there. All right, what else do I have for you today? I thought this was interesting. A little research that was done. Then I'll get to some question and answers as well. And then I was going to touch on, but there's a lot of questions, so I want to see if I can get to those questions today rather than some other stuff. I've too often missed those. Somebody looked at the position of the league is spending, and it's pretty interesting. 39% for guards, 40%, 40% for forwards, and 21% for centers. So I mean, really, it's almost equally distributed money across the board. This free agency obviously was wings got paid, but for the league, it seems to be just about the biggest spending teams, not necessarily the best teams, but the biggest spending teams emphasize on forwards a little bit. The Elite Eight, the last playoffs, so the 8 remaining Final Four of each conference, they spend a bit more on guards than forwards, 39% on guards to 36% on forwards, and then they spend 25% on centers. So the good teams, rather than spending 20% on centers, are spending 25% on centers. Lottery teams spend the most on forwards, but the least on centers. Interesting. 44% on forwards, 16% on centers. Maybe you're not good, so you try to play fast, you try to play small ball, you try to do some things differently. The Elite Eight have 75 million in payroll right now. First round losers have 66 million in payroll, and the lottery teams only have 53 million in payroll. I mean, bust baseball all the time, but it really looks as though you spend in the NBA, you get talent right now. Amongst the Elite Eight, the 4 biggest percentage spent on centers are all in the East, and at forward and guard, there are 2 teams with each conference with 4 top spenders. I was going to do one other thing today, but frankly, there's so little news out there. I'll wait to do it tomorrow about if you're going to build a defense, is there one position to stop? So let me go to the questions along the way. From Adam Rasmussen, do you have the Australian national team scheduled for the upcoming weeks? They're in Europe. They're going to continue to play these little I think they're in Lithuania. I think they're going to Finland to play. They're going to play these little pockets of 3 games in 4 days against other teams before they start pool play. I do not have the exact dates. Chad Sellers asks, will you quickly go over the predicted starting lineup for this year's season? I think you'll start camp with Trey Burke, Alec Burks, Gordon Hayward, Enes Kanter, and Derek Favors. Favors and Gobert will be your centers. Kanter will be your power forward with Booker and Novak. Gordon will be your small forward with Rodney Hood. Alec Burks will be your shooting guard with Trey Burke as your point guard and Dante Exum supplementing those 2 at different times and in different circumstances along the way. So that's the way I think it'll start. There'll be injuries, things will change. Ennis has been off that leg a little bit, so that's a nice way to think, but then the question is what kind of physical condition Ennis is going to be in. And when Ennis has not been in very good physical condition, he's been pretty far off his game. From Perry Goodger, in 365 days from now, who are we talking about as having a breakout year on the Jazz roster? Oh, I think Favors and Hayward have the most experience to be able to take a step forward in their games. Favors playing less post up, playing more roll to the basket, maybe getting a little bit more open isolations on the corner. And I think Hayward's going to do very well in this system. Whether the fan base will ever let Gordon just be really, really good instead of this whole concept of a max player, which is the max of what he could earn at that time, but it's not necessarily a max player, will be a question. But it's a boring answer for you. I think it'll be the 2 guys who have the most experience. Huntington Draper, have you had a chance to speak with Favors about exclusion from Team USA? Do you see him this motivating factor that can have a positive impact? Well, I'm not the biggest believer in motivating factors. Okay, I think it's cute. I think it's short-lived, and you either have it inside of you or you don't. You either are a worker or you're not. And you can have all the Team USA screwed me, now I'm really going to work? Well, that would actually really concern me. Why weren't you working beforehand? So I'm not a big believer in motivating factors. You either have that inner drive in you to do the extra work or you don't. But I have talked about Team USA, and he was really bummed out about it. And he and I did a long 25-minute sit-down last year at the end of the year that if you haven't found, worth doing a Google search for. Or maybe I'll try to find it. But he was definitely bothered by being excluded. I asked him early on once if he'd received any information, and his comment was no. And then when Gordon got the information, he and I talked about it. He was seriously bummed. Sure, I guess in that sense it's a motivator, but that just doesn't work. That's a media creation. And Adam Rasmussen again, do you have any info on Exum's injury history? I've read an interview where he had with Internet Sneaker Blog where he spoke about his hope that his new Adidas Boost will help his knees. That plus his ankle tweak has me curious about his durability. I think his durability is a real question mark. I don't have a history on it, but it was a real question mark in him in the draft. There's just been so little amount of data and so many few games for him played that I think that's a real question mark for him of whether or how well he can stay healthy and what he can do. He got injured in the USA U19 game and sat out that game with a minor tweak, but 82 games is a load, and he's just going to get whooped. And how he deals with that and how he can fight through it, and also what kind of guy he is when he deals with injuries because he's not going to be able to play perfect in the NBA. You can't play perfect. I mean, Trey, to his credit last year, something Trey really deserves credit on, he played really dead-legged and really struggled and tried to learn how to adapt his game, and it's part of the reason he shot so poorly and his numbers were so bad at times last year because his body just wasn't with him. That's what happens to first-year players in this league. It's what happened to young players. I mean, Favors, even at his point, admitted to not being able to, psych up for every game because you're playing guys you don't know, and he's going to have to learn how to do that. All right, good tip-off today. Thanks, guys. Hope you have a great one. We'll talk to you tomorrow as well with another edition. I'll try to get that defensive stuff in tomorrow for you. But thanks for tuning in every day in this off-season and just kind of staying in contact. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are enjoying it. If you get a chance, any positive comments on iTunes or on the Stitcher app are really, really important to us. It helps our standing. If you can put in a 5-star review, if you believe that's worthy of what we do, that would be even better. But those are the things that let iTunes know we exist, that you guys actually follow it and you listen. Let Stitcher know, and they've got all their algorithms. And the more I learn, the more I understand. Any comments, it can be a short sentence just about what you think of it, really matters a great deal. So if you get a chance to do that, and if obviously we'd prefer 5, or myself and I would prefer 5 stars. Heck, it's my birthday. Give me that as a little gift today. Go to iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you listen to this on, and give us a nice review as my birthday present. Thanks. See you.